This video hasn't even started and you're probably thinking already, no fucking way, not education. Education sucks. It does, but why does it suck? Does it have to suck, or did your education suck? And who is responsible for it? And what is education anyway? Is it that time you spent sleeping on your desk in a classroom, or was it when you got drunk and went out and got punched in the face? Was that education? Well, I would argue that the second is closer to being education than the first, because when you got punched in the face, you've learned something. But when you slept in the classroom, you've learned nothing. And I'm sure when you failed to perform, you were instructed by your parents and teachers that you're a fuck up and a loser and it's all your fault. And while it is generally a horrible idea to try to scapegoat and blame other people for your own failings, in this one case I'm gonna tell you that it probably was not your fault. Because actually the entire system has been devised in such a way and set up in such a way as to make you lose. Now this is because in any competition, whoever is the winner can ensure his victory either by increasing his own performance or by decreasing performance of others. In other words, one way to win a race is to run really fast, and another way to win a race is to break everybody else's legs. But there is usually a limit to how fast one can run. On the other hand, there is no limit to how badly you can break somebody's legs. And this is why in real life competition, the second technique is the preferred one. Now, one of my all-time favorite political figures, Malcolm X, has said something to the effect of education is the ticket to the future, or something like that. And you're probably thinking, well, this guy was obviously an idiot because my education hasn't done shit for me. Well, that's exactly the point. Your education is your broken legs, and you got this education for a reason, because it was determined by the people in charge that the limited space on the podium is going to be reserved for them, and there is just no room for you. Therefore you get the broken legs so that you have nothing to run on. Many people have noticed the similarities between public schools and prisons. The overall grey concrete box type buildings, the steel bars on the windows, security guards, metal detectors. And when people notice those things, they seem to have a problem understanding it. They find it strange. They think it's some kind of a paradox, but it really is not. It would be more surprising if schools were different from prisons, because schools are prisons. There is no fundamental difference there. Ideally, the purpose of a prison is for the person, for the inmate, to realize that he's done wrong and to change his ways so that when he comes out, he is no longer gonna be robbing 7-Elevens, etc. Of course, this never happens, but that's besides the point. But in case of the school, that's not even the purpose. If the purpose of the school is what the prison actually accomplishes, which is to keep a certain group of people off the street. In case of the prison, this is more like a side effect, but in case of the school, it is the actual purpose. So, if anything, schools are the real prisons, and prisons are merely failed schools. Because you have to realize that your government has only one real enemy, and that's you. And most of the government's efforts are directed towards neutralizing you as a threat. Even when your government goes to war with Al-Qaeda, which they themselves created and funded and still fund them in Libya today, Even when they do that, one of the main reasons they do it is to keep you distracted from realizing the fact that the real war is between you and your government. So the government creates external wars as a diversion just to keep you pacified and neutralized. But of course, another way to keep you neutralized is to have you put behind bars. And that's where the schools come in. They put you behind bars. Literally. Now let's look at some numbers in terms of age groups. If you're going to read Mein Kampf, which I did not read, but I read like the first page, it starts by acknowledging all the failed comrades or some such in Hitler's first attempt at a failed revolution, because he's writing it in jail. And along with the people whom he acknowledges, he lists their ages, and those ages are like 14, 17, at most maybe like 20. Bottom line is, when revolutions happen, they happen because young people do it. 60-year-olds, in their large part, they do not come out to the streets for the revolution. It's only, or for the most part, 17-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 14-year-olds. It has always been that way, and it's always going to be that way. That's why the government is not really concerned with neutralizing 60-year-olds. They're concerned with neutralizing teenagers. But of course, teenagers haven't done anything wrong yet. We cannot put them in prison. That's why we have school. And what about soldiers? What is their age group? Well, they're all 18 and 19-year-olds, essentially, in Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, whatever. It's all 18-year-olds. So why that? Well, basically, if they were any older, they already wouldn't be stupid enough to join the army. Besides, they would be past the revolutionary age. So as you graduate from high school, you have basically two options. You either go on with college or you join the army. And either way, you stay neutralized within the government system designed to keep you neutralized. So you're either in their education system behind bars, or if you have so much energy for killing people that you just cannot take it anymore, well, they oblige you by sending you to Iraq and letting you kill some fucking brown people or whatever. Because if they did not, you would be at home killing them. So now you're 22 years old, you've graduated from college, or you came back from Iraq, and for the first time in your life, you're beginning to get exposed to the real world. You're beginning to get a sense of how things work in real life, not within the government, because up until that point you have been entirely shielded by the government from any reality, and you have been indoctrinated for 20 straight years or so, first by your parents, and then by your teachers, and then by your instructors in the military or whatever. You've been brainwashed for 20 years with no contact with reality. You've never seen reality. All you've seen is the lies that you've been bombarded with for 20 straight years. Now you're beginning to face reality for the first time when you're about 22. So it's gonna take some while before you begin to even figure anything out. But let's say you're quick compared to most people, and you figure everything out by the time you're 25. Well, it's too late, because by 25 you're already irrelevant. 25 is not a revolutionary age. That's an age where people sit at home in front of a TV, eat popcorn, and raise their children. Now there are semi-intelligent people like Gary who say, wait a minute, our educational system isn't as good as it could be. To them it's a shock. They're thinking, well, wait a minute, we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and 12 years, 6-7 hours a day, and students come out of the school and they don't even know how to read. We can probably be more efficient than this. So then they start to think about how can we make it more efficient. And after some thinking they realize that actually education doesn't have to cost anything at all. There's no need for schools or teachers or anything. You just give people access to the internet and post educational material online and everybody learns whatever the fuck they want. And they think they're some kind of geniuses for figuring this out. Well, people don't go to school to learn. People go to school because if you don't go to school, you get arrested. That's why people go to school. And if your parents don't send you to school, your parents are arrested. So actually, education is not required to make somebody smart or independent, ingenious, whatever. Education is required to make people stupid slaves. This is why education always comes from institutions like the government, the church, and parents. In other words, education always comes from slave masters. And I wouldn't be fair to the government if I said that it is only the government that's trying to instill slave morality, obedience, and just teach you how to bend over and take it up the ass. No, it's not just the government. Of course, your parents start the job. And it's not even 100% your parents' fault. Because you can only teach somebody what you know. And all your parents know is how to be slaves. So this is why, kids of doctors become doctors, and kids of lawyers become lawyers, and kids of politicians become politicians, and kids of janitors become janitors. It is quite sad. One time I was driving by some beautiful grass lawn in California, and there was this Mexican, landscaping and shit. And with him was his daughter, who was like 6 or 7 years old, and she was helping him. And she was doing a great job too. I could tell she was, really hard working, and she wasn't clumsy or anything. Just she was probably as good at it as her father was. And it made me really sad, because if she didn't have a father at all, she'd be much better off in life. She would have probably learned to do something useful, something that actually paid money. But because she does have a father, he's gonna teach her the only thing that he can teach her, which is how to cut grass. And that's what she's gonna be doing for the rest of her fucking life. Because if you can't teach somebody how to be a master, because you're a slave yourself, the only thing you can teach that person is how to be a slave.